Hi everyone, it's Janice, host of the Divorcing Religion podcast. Thanks for tuning into my show, whether you're joining me on audio or video. I've heard from some folks recently who have told me just how much the show has meant, and some of them have even found it not only to be life-changing, but life-saving, as they felt there was no one else who understood what they were going through, and they found the Divorcing Religion podcast, and they started feeling encouraged. Please help me keep my show on the air. Become a member by clicking the join button on the Conference on Religious Trauma YouTube channel. Hi everyone, welcome to the Divorcing Religion podcast. I'm your host, Janice Selby. I'm a registered professional counselor and a religious trauma recovery coach. I do have a content warning for you today because we will be talking about sex and sexuality. I'm so pleased today to introduce you to somebody I know in real life, Elayna Love. We met through our mutual friend, religious trauma pioneer, Dr. Marlene Winnell. Not only did we attend Dr. Winnell's religious trauma recovery retreats together, but we also participated in the Leaving Jesus documentary, which recently premiered in Sweden. Elayna Love left a sex-toxic environment for a sex-positive one. She is an ex-Mormon turned stripper, phone sex operator, and OnlyFans creator. Elayna coaches her clients on releasing religious shame, uncovering their desires, and understanding boundaries and consent. And I'm happy to say that Elayna will also be joining me next year in Seattle for the Shameless Sexuality Conference. Welcome, my friend. It's nice to see you again.
Hello. It's so good to see you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I knew that I really wanted to have you on after you and I were able to connect in Sweden, too. That was such a cool trip to be on together and supporting the work of Dr. Winnell in the documentary, Leaving Jesus. What was your feeling after the trip?
Oh, and it was amazing. It was the trip of a lifetime. It was absolutely overwhelming, but so worth it. I'm so glad I went because I was really on the fence because it was expensive. But I'm so glad that I got to go to that. Like, how often do you get to go see a documentary that you're in premiere, you know?
I know. And let's not forget, the ABBA Museum was also there in Sweden, so that was also very exciting for me. But the documentary was just really a thrill, and we're looking forward to that being released in the United States and Canada sometime soon. And I wanted folks to learn a little bit more about you because you will be joining me at the Shameless Sexuality Conference next year. And I think people will be really curious to know how you made that transition from being a Mormon into the work that you're doing now, because you can't have any kind of shame in the work that you're doing now. So what was that transition like? How did it all happen?
So it was pretty extreme. I was very Mormon. There's different levels of Mormonism and religion in general. And Dr. Winnell talks about this too, of like, some people just kind of, they might be born into religion, but they never really take it seriously. So it doesn't really affect them. And then there's the extreme ones like me.
And me. Yeah.
and like you. And those of us who went to the retreat, like that's why we ended up with religious trauma syndrome. And it was kind of funny. I had gotten a job through the church as a caretaker. They had a job placement program. And I was working in the home taking care of this autistic boy, and he was sweet. He was wonderful. The dad of the boy that I was taking care of was not so great. And it turns out he was a registered sex offender, and they had sent me to work in his home and didn't tell me. And some creepy things started happening, and sorry,
were you an adult at that time? Or were you a teen?
I was. Okay. I was 25 at that time.
Okay.
And so they didn't have to disclose that to me because I was over 18. But still, like, they knew. And so, like, he grabbed my ass and was just
inappropriate.
Really inappropriate. And then another member from the church told me that. And so I had to quit the job, and I was still Mormon at the time. And then I went back to the church, go back to your perpetrator. looking for another job, and they'd actually dissolved the program because of that. And they were like, oh, we don't want like a lawsuit or something. And so then progressed forward, like a few months later, I'd started figuring out that the church didn't make any sense. And I'd been going deeper into it and reading the scriptures more, praying more, going to church more, because I was trying to heal my depression. And of course, they tell you the church has all the answers, right? And through that, I started to see it didn't make any sense. They say the cure for religion is reading the Bible, right? And so I just was so fed up with the way I'd been treated at that job. And that wasn't the first job I'd been treated that way. And I just hit this screw it point. And I'd actually applied at Hooters twice. Okay. I was just like, if I'm going to be treated this way, I'm going to make money off of it. And Hooters turned me down. So I don't know what made me think I could actually go work at a club as a stripper. And
that takes so much confidence.
Or just like desperation. I hate saying that because a lot of people are like, what made you do this? Were you just desperate? And it's like, yeah. But you know what? I'm so glad that this came along. It was just enormously healing for me. And I actually went to the club. It was a Friday the 13th. It was full moon. My period had started.
Oh my God.
And I went to the club just for information, and they were like, yeah, you're cute. You can work tonight. I was like, what? It's easy. Just dance and take your clothes off. I'm like, this doesn't dance. And that's crazy.
Oh my gosh.
But I just was like, I was at this screw it point. I needed a job. I was tired of being treated that way in other jobs. I was so fed up with the church's toxicity around sex and just your body in general. And I would, it was the same year that I left the church that I started dancing. And it was pretty shocking. It was very terrifying. And so Mormons don't drink alcohol at all.
Right.
And the bartender thought I was just being a jerk because she was like, what do you want for drink? I was like, I want alcohol. And she goes, okay, what kind? And I literally, my jaw dropped and I was like, there's different kinds.
Oh
and
my gosh.
So starstruck. And she thought that I was just being a jerk. Like, yeah, what kind do you want? And I was like, I literally don't know. Like, please just pick something for me.
Wow. Oh my gosh. So take us back, if you feel comfortable, a little bit further. So did you grow up in a Mormon family, and that's how you were introduced to Mormonism?
Yeah, I did. And not only was my family Mormon, but it was generational Mormon. So dating back to my great-great-grandfather, he was the first one in my family to join the church. And so we would have these big celebrations with all my 10 million cousins.
Right. And so your family, your parents were Mormons. And did you you mentioned being all in at some point. Had you always believed it when you were growing up?
Yeah, I did. I truly believed it. I never doubted it. I never went looking to leave the church. I was like so convicted in my faith. I wanted to serve a mission. I was as hardcore as you could get.
Wow.
So
Yes.
it was really shocking. It was a shock to me when it didn't make any sense. And like the house of cards fell down. Everyone was shocked. No one thought I was like the last person you would expect to leave religion.
And were you looking when in that final year, so you were kind of really studying the scriptures and the Book of Mormon more intensely. Were you also reading any criticisms, or had you heard any critiques of the belief system?
I'd heard a lot of critiques throughout my life that I just didn't pay attention to, but those started to come back up, and they started to piece together and suddenly make sense. And I started having these conversations with my brother. He had left the church a lot sooner when he was a teenager, and because he was gay and he figured that out pretty early. And so I was actually trying to bring him back to the fold.
Oh,
I told him that later. He was like, you what? And I thought, though, that it wouldn't be fair for him to listen to me if I didn't listen to him. And so I started listening to him and actually listening. Like, I'd heard him say all this stuff before, but this time I actually was like, okay, I'm really going to listen, because I thought he was going to be wrong. And I thought I was going to find the flaw in his argument.
Mm-hmm.
And then I couldn't find it.
Wow.
And what he was saying made sense. And what I was reading didn't make sense. It was like bad writing. It's like reading a book, and on page 1 they say the main character has green eyes, and on page 3 they have blue eyes, and there's no explanation. They didn't wear contacts. It just didn't make sense. It didn't add up.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So then your brother was kind of an instrumental person in at least planting a seed there, getting you to kind of reconsider these things that you had always previously considered to be factual. And then you were, I think you mentioned 25 when you left. Is that right?
I think I was almost 26.
Okay, right.
26.
And were you single, married?
I was married.
You were married at the time. Were you married to a Mormon?
He had joined the church to get with me.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. But he was not living the religion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Had he met you outside the church and was interested and wanted to get with you, and so then he joined the church? So you knew he was coming in as a convert, but you hoped or expected that it was more of a real conversion than it really was. Yeah.
And the church was, I'm going to blame them partially for that whole disaster. Because they would say this jokingly. They'd be like, flirt to convert. Haha. I mean, you don't have to, it works.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I can't believe they actually said that. Wow. And what did your parents think? Did they have any thoughts on you dating someone who was a new convert?
They knew he was a bad guy. And so that was a really tricky situation. They somehow, like, from the get-go, the moment they saw him, they just knew he was not a good person.
Wow.
And I was 19 when I met him, and he was 16 years older than me. And they kept telling me to get away from him. But the thing is, I had no skills for standing up for myself, because, like, it was like, Mormonism does not encourage boundary setting or saying no. You're supposed to be a doormat. You're supposed to just help everyone, like, no matter what, you have to help people. And they groom you to be the perfect willing victim. So then you meet someone like that who's a predator, and they're like, you're pre-groomed for me. Fantastic.
Wow.
All of his manipulations, I was just set up for falling for all of that.
Right. And my understanding, because I didn't grow up Mormon, but the few things are as important as getting married. There's like the mission that's important, the Mormon mission, but then you are supposed to get married and start having kids. And that is something that's taught over and over again.
As a woman, you're supposed to get married. That's more important than going on a mission. You can go on a mission as a woman, but you're encouraged to go get married before that. And so I don't know if they've changed it since then, but guys go on a mission at 19, and then girls wouldn't go until 21 if they didn't get married first.
Wow.
So much pressure to get married.
Right. And is that something, did you experience that pressure too? Like, did you have female friends around you who were getting married in their late teens and early 20s?
Yeah. Both my sisters got married in their early 20s. I think they were both like 20, 21 or something like that. I had one of my best friends got married really young. There was just, I remember this string of girls who got married like right after high school. And, yeah, there was just, and they tell you, if you're 21 and you're not married yet, you're too old. You're an old maid.
Oh my gosh. That is so crazy. That is so crazy. And I remember feeling that when I was like 22 and I was at college, I think. And my Christian college friends who are getting married, engaged, and everything. And I was like, oh, I'm an old man. I'm going to be an old man. Now I'm like, oh my God. I hardly knew enough to come in out of the rain when I was 22 years old. So,
And what's
well,
crazy is I've learned this now, like the human brain doesn't fully develop until you're like 25.
mhm.
So,
Yeah. Wow. Well, I'm curious about your home environment growing up in a Mormon home. I kind of have like the Donnie and Marie Osmond idealized version of a very perfect family, because I know that a lot of Mormon women end up feeling a lot of pressure to kind of be perfect. Was that a thing in your family?
very much so. Very much so. We would have the missionaries over occasionally or have like a church member over. And I remember like having to spend the whole day cleaning the house so it could be presentable for the Lord's messengers. Just
Mhm.
like this, so much pressure to be perfect.
Wow, that's hard. I have heard also that there is a very high, unfortunate depression and attempted suicides among the Mormon population. I think because of this pressure to be perfect, and nobody is perfect, but just that intense pressure can be so hard on people. And then at some point, your brother either left on his own or was asked to leave because he figured out he was gay, and being
Mhm.
gay doesn't fit, I guess, within the Mormon view of things. Is that true?
Oh, very much so. I remember him being really upset one day and taking a paper out of one of their pamphlets where it says homosexuality is an abomination. And he taped it to my parents' door because they were just like, we don't understand why you're upset. And so he taped it to my parents' door of just like, this is why. And yeah, he left on his own. Good for him.
Wow. And were you a teenager or in your 20s when that happened, when he left and you're coming to terms with he's leaving?
Uh, I think I was an older teen, trying to remember. I think I was like 17 or so when he left.
Because that's a big deal. That's different than someone just growing up and going away to college and getting married. Like it feels more of a cutting off or losing the person
Mhm.
from your life. So I'm really glad that you were able to stay in touch with him, and then because he played such a pivotal, important role in your own life. So now, fast forward a number of years, and you've had some upsetting work situations related to the church. And then you came to the conclusion that the church wasn't all it was cracked up to be.
Mhm.
And you were going to leave, and you were also going to look for work in an industry that was completely shameful according to the church. Did that kind of all happen around the same time?
So I left the church. I remember specifically January 1st, 2012. And I remember everyone thought the world was going to end in 2012, and my world kind of ended. Um,
Hmm.
and it was that date because their meetings rotated like different time slots, and they would have different groups meet at different times. And we went from meeting at I think it was like 2 p.m. to having to meet at 8 a.m. And I am not a morning person. I was just like, well, I'm just going to take a break. I'm still going to believe that it's true, but I'm going to take a break. And my brother had actually noticed every time I would get home from church, I'd be having a panic attack. And he was like, "What's going on with you?" And I was just like, "Oh, it just happens every Sunday. It just
Oh
starts
no.
every Sunday. This is just what I go through." And he was like, "What?" And this had been going on for years. And he was like, maybe this is the sign that it's not working for you,
Wow.
not good for you. And I
Yeah.
just thought, oh, this is my test. I have to, this is the Lord's trial kind of thing. They always kind of play up suffering. So if you're having a hard time, if something's not working for you, they're just like, the Lord is testing you. You just got to stay strong. Um,
Wow.
but then I left in January and then I didn't start dancing until August. So there was a little bit of a buffer zone, but it felt pretty immediate. Like that first, I'm sure you know, that first year of leaving religion, everything is new and overwhelming.
And
And
you were married at that time still.
yeah, And he didn't like that very much.
He didn't like that you left the church, or he didn't like that you were looking at becoming a dancer, or both?
He loved that I left the church.
Okay.
He was like, oh, I can be my awful self now. I can stop pretending. And he hated that I started dancing, though. But
Mm.
job.
So he couldn't control you. There was money that was needed, and you decided that's how you were going to be contributing, bringing in the money. And so, did the marriage go on much longer after that? Like, were you married for a number of years?
This all happened in 2012. I left the church. I started dancing, and then December 2012, I left him. And it was through the club that I finally started learning how to set boundaries, because the bouncers came up to me. This is kind of bad, but they kept having to pull guys off of me.
Mm-hmm.
And the bouncers came up to me and they're like, you have got to learn how to stand up for yourself. You've got to learn how to say no and enforce it. Like, you cannot just be like this damsel in distress. If you're going to survive this industry, you've got to set boundaries. You've got to stand up for yourself. And that like really stuck with me. And so I started getting practice at saying no and setting boundaries and standing up for myself. And then I finally took that to my real life and for real stood up to this man who had been crossing my boundaries from day one. Because that's why I married him. Like everyone, when I didn't get with him. He got with me.
Mm-hmm.
But, let's make that clear.
Mm-hmm.
He was a coworker from another job, and that I actually quit because he was harassing me so much.
Oh,
and,
wow.
Yeah, it was trail riding for horses on the beach. It was like my dream job, and I had to quit it because he was like harassing me so much, and I was trying to get away from him.
Mm.
And I'd been telling him to leave me alone, and then he would show up at my apartment and crying and saying he was going to off himself if he didn't get to see me.
Mm-hmm.
And my Mormon guilt would kick in that I have to save everyone and help everyone. And so I'd be like, okay, well, you can see me. Please don't do that,
Wow.
And yeah, all right.
So there was a lot of manipulation there that was going on, and you were young and you were vulnerable because of your training through the church. And so then, I mean, this is so mind blowing. You take this job, and it's through dancing at the club. It's something that the church would have absolutely frowned on and not permitted, and that's what helped you gather up your strength and recognize your value and your power to finally tell this person, no, you don't get to do this to me anymore.
Yeah. And the club is where I learned consent is even a thing. I didn't even. The reason I got married to him was because he was doing things to me that I did not consent to. But I thought that I was giving into temptation because I was really confused how I could say no and he would do it anyway, and then it would feel good. And it was really, really confusing.
Mm-hmm.
And it was through dancing that I finally realized, like, if anyone massages you a certain way, because guys at the club love to massage you.
I'm sure.
It doesn't matter who it is. If they have the right technique, it's going to feel good.
Mm-hmm.
But if you say no, that's still a boundary.
Yeah.
And if you do it anyway, that's crossing a boundary. And so I thought that I had given in to temptation, and I was so confused, and then thought that I needed to marry this person because he'd like soiled my virginity.
Right.
I was still fully virgin on my wedding night, but I was, I'd gotten into too much of the danger zone, I guess.
Right. Wow. Oh my gosh. You were so vulnerable, and he absolutely was predatory and manipulative and took full advantage of that. So I'm thinking back to when you first started at the club. And I mean, your story about not knowing that there were different types of alcohol, that really speaks to the level of innocence that you had there. And so what was it like for you learning to dance? Had you done any kind of performance kind of stuff when you were growing up, or how does a person even learn to do this? Did you just attend and watch other women as they were doing their dances at the club?
So I'd taken ballet when I was a kid for a couple
Mm-hmm.
of years. So I did have a little bit of that. And then I had some stage training because I'd been in plays in high school. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure they don't want me to do ballet. Like I'm pretty good at it. But I'm pretty sure this is not ballet. And then the most I'd gotten a belly dancing workout video that my mother-in-law at the time had given me. And she was not Mormon. And so belly dancing was kind of, ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so my first time out on stage, my audition, I just went out there and I did my workout video.
Wow. And they liked it.
I had some people come to me and they're like, I can tell you're new, but keep at it. You'll get there.
And was it consistently hard to do, or did you get out there and from the first time you did it, you enjoyed it and thought, I can do this? Or was it
Still hard to
difficult?
do.
Was it so hard
It's
to do?
still hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
But how I learned was the other strippers took me under their wing and showed me what to do. And now there's like pole studios that you can go learn pole, but
Right.
it's become the ballet of pole, in my opinion, because it's very much so this is the move and you do not deviate from the move. But what I learned was you dance however you feel like. And there's certain things that you can do that look prettier than others.
Huh?
It's really up to you. If you feel like doing this with your leg, then do it. And it's going to look different on everyone's body because everybody is different. So that was really freeing for me. And then they showed me a few things. They showed me how to climb the pole. The first time I climbed a pole, there was another dancer pushing me up by my butt saying, you can do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. What about the idea of comparison? Like, because you just said everybody is different, and so for sure there are different bodies doing the kind of work that you're talking about. Has that ever been an issue for you, or have you felt like just I'm pretty confident in my own body? I like what I've got, and I know other people like what I've got too.
It's kind of been a double-edged sword. Like, it's really hard not to compare yourself.
Yeah.
But as you know, we all lose at the comparison game. And so there's definitely that side to it. But on the other side, what I realized was like there's not one type of beautiful. Like there's my type of beautiful, there's your type of beautiful, there's someone else's type of beautiful. And it's the way I think of it is like flowers. Like there's cherry blossoms and there's primroses and there's daffodils, and they're all so wildly different, but they're all beautiful. And of course, the guys will be like, oh, well, she's the prettiest. Well, she's the prettiest. But if you ask 10 different guys, they're going to give you 10 different answers of who's the prettiest.
That's true. I love that. Yeah.
Really, really healing for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, how about how did you deal with the whole shame thing when it comes to religion and purity culture recovery? Did you just kind of grit your teeth and get through it, or did you recognize that there was healing going on? Like it's so empowering, I feel like, to get to that point that you are at, where you can take off your clothes, you just feel comfortable with who you are. And that's the opposite. We're taught to feel shame, that we have to be covered all the time. So what's that journey been like?
It's been a real struggle, honestly. Like, there's times that I feel empowered and I'm just like, yes, like, there's nothing wrong with the human body. I think it's so weird that we're the only animal that is afraid of what we look like and what other people look like. It's
Yes.
body. It's just anatomy. Why do we have to be so like weirded out by this is what I look like?
Yeah.
And so there's times that I felt really empowered, and then there's been other times that that Mormon guilt will kick in, and I'm like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this, blah blah blah. And so it's been a struggle, and I've had to do a lot of healing and therapy. Working with Dr. Marlene Winnell has been extremely helpful, life saving.
Yeah.
And there's still moments where I break down crying because I'm feeling ashamed. And then I just have to do that self-talk again of be like, there's nothing wrong with showing my body. There's nothing wrong with people seeing bodies.
Yes. Yeah.
And I feel like I'm actively like resisting this awful purity culture by continuing to do this.
Mhm.
This is my act of resistance.
Yes, I love it. A big FU to purity culture.
Yeah.
Sure. And so then you have, for a number of years, worked in clubs. And then you have also added some additional things to your repertoire because you're a creator on OnlyFans. And you also have done some phone sex work or sex operator work. Is that something that still goes on today? I remember that like from the 80s and 90s, but I didn't know if it was still okay.
I was so thrilled to see it's still a thing and it's popping.
Wow.
It's like a
Wow.
time capsule. It's still going.
And literally on the phone. So like they can't
Mhm.
see you. You're just
Yeah,
talking to them.
just on the phone.
Wow.
They can pay extra and they can see me through the computer.
Mhm.
But that's an extra rate. But most of them just want to talk.
And how's the transition been to OnlyFans then? Because in some way, like it's different. When you're in the club, there are people literally right there watching you, looking at you. They could pretty much reach out and touch you, although they probably should keep their hands to themselves. But when you're at home, you're like in your room by yourself, but there could be thousands of people watching. Do they interact with you? Are they able to talk to you or send requests or that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's been a struggle transitioning from in the club to online. And I started during COVID, as we all did. And because at the club, I can do things like wear my perfume and they can smell me. And, I can't do that through the computer.
That's right.
Not yet. We can't send smells yet. Or I could like lean forward and touch their thigh. That's like my secret weapon move.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
And I can't do that online. And so it depends on what they're doing with me online. If I'm live streaming, then I can see their username and I can see the comments that they're typing out. But that's all that I can see. And I can see the little likes and the tips. But it's not the same as hearing a crowd cheer for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And how do you figure out? I mean, even logistics of like, where do you put the camera? Because it's totally different. That's just so. Is that stuff that you have just figured out on your own, or do you have a partner that has helped you figure things out, or what's it like?
I've just had to figure it out on my own.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've researched some things, and my partner he did actually go to school to be a film editor, so he knows things about film, but he
Mm-hmm.
works full time, and so he doesn't really have hours to spend in here. So that's how I got this camera angle. Is I literally spent hours playing around with different camera angles, and this is a really small room. So yeah, I've just trial and error had to figure it out.
Oh, and so do you still do the other things too? You still dance and you still work on the phone, or are you mostly focusing on the OnlyFans now?
Yeah, I do all of it. It keeps me busy. I actually only go to the club pretty rarely now because I'm making more money online. I
Nice.
just kind of go to the club for fun now. It's nostalgic. Yeah, because I love performing, and I love performing in person and hearing the crowd cheer while I'm upside down. Like, that's an amazing feeling, and I can't hear that unless I'm doing a one-on-one cam show with people. Then they can see me and they can cheer. And
yeah, that's a huge difference between getting that live interaction and feedback directly from the crowd, because that's what keeps people performing, is that, you know, that energy. And it's just very different when you are instead not having a live audience there for you. So I'm sure it's all been a learning curve. I salute you for you know, moving along with technology as technology has advanced. And what I love about OnlyFans is that it's offering women in particular opportunities to take control of their lives financially. I just think that's fantastic. And I mean, it's all about consent, and you consent to doing the things that you are doing. And that's just I think that's a lovely thing. I do wonder about your family, your Mormon family. What's ever happened with them through the years then?
So I was actually renting a house from them. I was paying them money. I was 20, 25, 26. I can't remember now. And I'm terrible at lying. And so I ended up telling them that I was a stripper, and they kicked me out of my house that I was paying.
Oh my gosh.
And so I moved across the country. I was like, well, if I've got to move across the country. But they won't say what I do. They've lied about it. And I've had other people, they actually did this weird thing where they set something up with their neighbor who's a therapist, and they wanted me to have a session with her. And they did this whole weird thing to get me to meet up with her. And she's like, yeah, your parents wanted me to talk to you because I heard that you're a cocktail waitress at a club.
Well,
let me get the record straight.
Yes. So does that mean, did they want to have some kind of interaction with you, or is it more than they can handle because they're still Mormon and they can't abide you being independent?
I recently said the word stripper on the phone with my sister, and she hung up on me.
Oh, wow.
So it's a very strange relationship. I'm ready to just be done with them, but they can't take no for an answer. And I've told them, look, if you don't, I don't want to tell you all the gory details, you know, but I'm exhausted at trying to pretend like I'm someone that I'm not, you know, like I'm not going to put it in your face. I'm not going to, you know, I don't want to pretend like I don't do this, you know. And so I tried to not talk to them anymore after my dad tried to manipulate me out of some money. But they won't take no for an answer. And so I kind of am forced to keep talking to them. So
they're still in your life, hopefully at arm's distance.
Yeah. They live in a different state. So they'll send me stuff in the mail that I don't want, and I've told them I don't want it, and they send it anyway. And
yeah. What about your brother? Are you still in contact with him?
Yeah, I have a really good relationship with him, and he lives close by, and so we still get together and drink wine and talk shit about the church.
Yes. Have you ever connected with other ex-Mormons that you knew? Like, do you have any connection with anyone from your old life at all?
No, I don't. There's a couple people that I knew left the church before I did that I've thought about reaching out to. Maybe I just should. No, I don't have any connection with them. I lost a lot of friends. I didn't have that many friends to begin with, but I lost the few that I did. And I have met a couple other ex-Mormons at Marlene's retreats, but they're few, actually.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hear from a fair number of ex-Mormons who are interested in coming onto my podcast and talking about their experiences. And until I started doing that, I was not aware of how high demand, like the high pressure that is a part of the whole Mormon package. To me, it's kind of on par with Jehovah's Witnesses for the intense pressure. And I think also when folks leave Mormonism, they can be subjected to shunning sometimes, which is definitely a thing with Jehovah's Witnesses. So it's just so painful when that happens, and families choose the religion over the relationship. So it's just a hard time. What advice would you have, if you have any, for people right now who are questioning their beliefs?
People who are questioning is follow your intuition, listen to your gut, don't listen to what the church is telling you. And, if it doesn't make logical sense, then it doesn't make sense. Like, stop doing the mental gymnastics and trying to fit that square block into that round hole, like, it's not going to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dr. Marlene Winnell's book, Leaving the Fold.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, that book was super, super helpful for me too, and her retreats as well. There's really something extremely validating about spending time in the company of other people who had been, devout in their belief system, whatever it was, and now they aren't. And now they've left, and they are just wanting to build a supportive, safe, secular network and community for themselves moving forward, and not to mention rebuilding their whole identity, because that's a pretty big deal too. And a lot of us, we lose our community, we lose our family, we lose our marriages, a lot of us. So that's one reason why I do run a support group on Tuesday nights for people that are recovering from religious trauma. And people are in that group from every background. Like, this is the first time I've had interactions with people who had been Scientologists for years. And then I have former Mormons, former Jehovah's Witness, former Muslims, like just people from every background. And they can relate to the pain and the grief that comes with losing so many important things, losing that community. Even we can come to see that the belief system was, maybe ridiculous or so untrue, but it still was how we understood our life. It was the lens through which we interpreted all the different things. And when that is shattered, when we don't have that anymore, it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. And it's been so helpful meeting other people like you who were devout and who left. Because I met a lot of people who were sort of Christians, and they couldn't understand why I was dysfunctional and why I had so much grief. And they were just like, well, come on, let's just go out to the bar now. Like, what's the big deal? And they didn't understand how overwhelming that was for me. And so, yeah, it's been very validating, very healing to meet other people who were devout and who left.
Right. And people who are actively building a life that feels rewarding to them. I mean, it looks completely different than the life that we thought that we would have, but it's a life now of my own choosing. The people in my life are people that I allow into my life. So for me, it's been a lot of understanding my strength and my worth, but the power that I have, because I feel like Christianity is fundamentally disempowering for women, especially.
Yeah, it is. It's so disempowering. And that's exactly what got me into that situation with my ex-husband. Was I had no power. And then doing this was extremely empowering for me. And I started building up my self-worth and my self-power and was able to stand up to him. And yeah, this life is so different from what I imagined it was going to be.
Hey, yeah. And do you see that your your popularity is growing or online. I just have no idea how a person would even promote themselves. So, but is that something that you see happening from month to month or over time, that more people are showing an interest in what you have to offer?
Yeah, I have, and it's exciting. And I also had no idea how to promote this. Like, I was used to working in person. I wasn't really big on the whole social media thing. And then it's kind of like, well, if I like COVID happened and I had to pay my bills, I was like, well, I have to figure this out now.
Yeah.
And so just like being consistent with it and posting and telling people about it and just sharing it, and then getting opportunities like this to be on a podcast and like share that and get that little boost, and then cross promoting with other creators is a one way that I've gotten attention.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you have like, I don't know the depth of interaction that you have with your clients. Do some of them want to talk about the fact that you were a Mormon or religious kind of stuff at all?
Yeah, I was pretty quiet about it. Like, that was kind of like the subject that I do not talk about for a long time because I didn't want to scare my clients. And I just felt like it was unsexy. But then when Ellen was filming the documentary, I got this idea for this phone sex listing called corrupt. You can edit this out if you need to. Corrupting Christians one cock at a time. And it was just kind of funny. But I like wrote in the listing, like, do you feel shame whenever you feel pleasure, and blah, 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 like all these things. And I've had so many people reach out to me like, wow, like your listing like hit the nail on the head kind of thing. Like that's what
Amazing.
and I've actually had some really, really awesome conversations with people, talking to them about religious trauma syndrome that they didn't even know they had. They didn't even know they had a name for it. So it's a really unique way for me to reach people, because a lot of these people are probably too ashamed to even go to a therapist, and they don't
Yes.
know what to say. And then if they do go to a therapist and they're like, I watch porn and I feel like I'm addicted, then the therapist is probably going to just be like, okay, so you're a sex addict, so let's work on that. They're
Right.
not going to realize, no, you're not addicted. You're being a normal human being doing a
Hmm.
bodily function. It's totally
Hmm.
fine. It's actually healthy. It's not healthy to not have that release. It actually
Hmm.
has a lot of physical health problems, not to mention a whole host of mental health problems.
Right, right. And so shout out to another friend and colleague of mine, Dr. Daryl Ray. Dr. Ray founded Recovering from Religion. And one book that he wrote is called Sex and God. And I recommend that for everybody who's watching or listening to this program. It's a wonderful book and addressing some of the things that you were just talking about. It. I love the fact that you are using this medium to actually educate people about religious trauma, because even just finding that phrase, religious trauma or religious trauma syndrome, can be such a relief to
Mhm.
people. And they're going, oh, it is a real thing. Like, I'm not crazy. This isn't just all in my head. This is actually something that other people struggle with as well. So you are providing an important service in doing that. That's awesome. And so is that mainly through the phone calls that you have with people, or do you sometimes have those conversations on video chat when you're doing the OnlyFans?
It's all kind of a rotating door. So I talk about this to people in person. I talk about this through video chat. I also do just texting with people. A lot of people just want to text. So I'll have text conversations, phone conversations. So
Oh,
all
I'm
the
learning so
media.
much. This is great. Thank you. I'm very excited that you're going to be joining me at the Shameless Sexuality Life After Purity Culture Conference in Seattle next year. Yes. And that's going to be May 23rd to 25th. And people can go to the shamelesssexuality.org. Yes, it's like short for orgasm. Shamelesssexuality.org is the website where people can learn more about this excellent conference. It's going to be a hoot. It's going to be lots of fun, and it's going to be very interesting as well. People are going to be learning things and having a good time. And that's next year. So I'm so pleased that you're going to be joining me there for that.
I'm super, super honored that you're going to have me. So
it's going to be great. I don't know if you had any other things that were on your mind. Can you please tell people how they can find you?
So you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Elayna Love on Instagram. That's ELAYNALOVE. I'm also on Facebook at Elayna Love XXX. And then if you want my OF, you can go to my Linktree, which is, you'll put the link in there.
I sure will, yeah. Gonna include it.
Elayna Love.
Perfect. Okay. Well, this has been so nice. It's really great to see you again and to learn a little bit more about you. Thanks for joining me today.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Janice.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for watching, everyone. Oh, I love that kiss goodbye. Thanks for joining me on the Divorcing Religion podcast, everyone. Take care. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.